I'm Rachel Coleman, 34, and I almost lost my son in a Hartford courtroom because my ex-husband's attorney had polished one line until it gleamed like a coin. She's barely scraping by. She can't give these kids a real home, real food, real clothes. Why should she keep them? Judge Bennett tilted her head at that slow, deliberate, the nod judges give when they think they've heard the whole story. I sat at the table with my palms pressed flat against the wood, holding my breath behind my teeth. I didn't cry. My grandmother Nora raised me on one rule: tell the truth slowly. And I was trying to. But nobody in that room knew what was coming. Not the judge, not Mark, not his lawyer, not even me, until my 7-year-old rose up out of the gallery with a folded piece of paper tucked in his backpack. And by the time the hearing ended, my ex-husband had gone the color of drywall. Welcome to her side of the story, for every woman who held it together alone. We tell quiet, grounded stories about women who got underestimated, and the moment the whole room finally turns around. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, stay with me for the next hour. Drop a comment, and subscribe if this is your kind of story. A year before that courtroom, I was still married. Still initialing pages I didn't fully read. Mark Whitfield ran his business, Whitfield Property Group, out of a converted barn outside West Hartford for lakeside rental units, a small retail strip on Danbury Road, and a smile that got bankers to pick up their phones on weekends. I'd worked as a paralegal at Hargrove and Kessler, an estate planning firm, for 7 years. Reliable hours, a 20-minute commute, a paycheck that came on time. Mark called my job cute once, at a dinner party, and I let it slide because our son was asleep upstairs and I was tired. And some arguments aren't worth what they'd break. Noah was 6 that year. His art teacher had sent home a note, very thoughtful compositions. He draws what's actually there, not what you'd expect him to. I stuck it to the fridge next to the grocery list, and a hand-drawn countdown calendar I'd made him for summer camp. That was our kitchen magnets, lists, one chipped mug that said world's okayest paralegal. Then, that October, I found a loan agreement in our filing cabinet. $175,000. Signed by Mark, made out to a man named Frank Doyle. I knew Frank. He was Mark's golf buddy. He didn't lay a single tile or pour an ounce of concrete for that money. It was a favor to a friend, dressed up as a business expense. I recognized the shape of it immediately, because I'd spent 7 years filing exactly this kind of paperwork for other people's husbands. I brought it up at dinner. Mark set his fork down. You don't understand how real estate works, honey. I'd signed where he pointed for 7 years. I used to tell myself that was love. Turns out, it was just filing. By January, we were living in different zip codes. I found a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a small building off Larchmont Avenue, radiator heat, parking lot view. Noah said looked like a checkerboard whenever it rained. I taped up the same kind of fridge chart, a laminated custody calendar with a sticker system underneath. Gold star for every night Noah brushed his teeth without being asked. That calendar became my anchor. I'd look at it the way a sailor checks a compass, not because it told me where I was going, but because it proved I was somewhere solid. Mark's life, meanwhile, looked different by the week. His stepmother, Diane, the woman who'd raised him since he was 12, posted photos from some foundation gala. Mark in a navy suit, the lake house strung with lantern lights, a caterer balancing a tray of something I couldn't name. Noah mentioned his dad's new hot tub. That's nice, buddy, I said. I didn't go looking. What I did look up, instead, was a phrase Noah had repeated from something he'd overheard on his father's phone. Whitfield Group. 2. I searched it that night after he'd fallen asleep. No state registration. No filings on the Connecticut business portal. Just a name Mark had said out loud, attached to an entity that didn't seem to exist on paper, anywhere. I bookmarked the search and shut the laptop. Some questions are better left to ripen. In March, Mark hired Gordon Hale, of Hale and Whitcomb Family Law, the kind of office with a Keurig in the lobby and a view of the river. Our first procedural conference was at the Hartford courthouse. Fluorescent lighting, plastic chairs. My boss, Walter Higgins, came with me. Walter founded Hargrove and Kessler, 59 years old, built like a man who'd rather read a deposition than eat lunch. He'd offered to represent me for free the week I told him about the divorce. I said no 3 times. Rachel, he finally said, you have a team. Use it. The 4th time I said yes. Hale shook Walter's hand in the hallway. We won't make this difficult, he said, smiling the way people smile when they've already memorized the seating chart. Inside, he turned to me. Miss Coleman, just so we have a clear picture, what's your monthly net, including any support you're currently receiving? Walter put a hand on my arm. We'll provide financials through the proper channels. Gordon. Hale just nodded. He didn't need my answer. I'd seen him glance at a folder that already had my bank statements in it. I still don't know how he got them. Walking me to the elevator afterward, Walter said one sentence that sat in my stomach for the next 5 months. Rachel, they're going to make this about money. Not about Noah. He was right. He was always right about the things I didn't want to hear. That Thursday night, Noah sat at the kitchen table doing a worksheet on weather patterns while I made spaghetti. His yellow rain jacket, the one with the zipper pull that clicked like a tiny motor, hung off the back of his chair. He looked up. Mom, what if someone says something at school that isn't true? I turned the burner down. Like what? Like if Tyler says I didn't bring my markers, but I did. I sat across from him. You don't have to fix it fast. Tell the truth slowly. Look at your shoes. Breathe twice. Then say what's real. He considered that. What if nobody believes me? Then you still told the truth. Then you'll sleep fine. He went back to his worksheet. I went back to the spaghetti. Tell the truth slowly. My grandmother Nora used to say that to me when I came home, red-faced over some kid's lie in the cafeteria. She never raised her voice. She raised her standards. She'd kept the books for a plumbing supply company in Bridgeport for over 4 decades, and she believed accuracy was its own form of love. She'd passed 4 years earlier and left me $80-some thousand in an account I never mentioned to Mark. Not because I was hiding it, he simply never asked. And Nora had taught me that some money is a safety net, not a topic of conversation. Dane showed up on a Saturday without calling. 2 LL beanbags, a smile that could cut glass. Brought Noah a few things for winter. You know how he runs cold. Noah was at a friend's. I let her in, because refusing Diane felt like refusing weather. It was going to happen regardless. She set the bags down, $600 in fleece and boots. Tag still on, and scanned my apartment the way an appraiser looks over a foreclosure. The water stain on the ceiling. The case files stacked by the window. Have you thought about somewhere with a yard? She asked, touching my wrist. For Noah's sake, I'd met Diane maybe 4 times during my marriage, and each time I walked away feeling measured and filed. She was 60-something, a retired divorce attorney of 30 years, who'd married Mark's father 6 months after Mark's biological mother left for a man in Vermont. She'd raised Mark from age 12 on, and she never let anyone forget it. Some women just aren't built for this kind of fight, she said on her way out, adjusting her coat in my hallway mirror. I didn't answer, but I noticed her tote bag was open, and sitting on top of her reading glasses was a yellow legal pad, filled with tight handwritten columns. I couldn't read it from where I stood. I didn't need to. I'd worked around lawyers long enough to recognize a strategy memo on site. My sister Karen called that Sunday. 3 years older, married to Tom, living 40 minutes away in Meriden, and in 30-some years of being my sister, she had never once asked what my rent was. So when she opened with, "How are you managing the apartment costs?" I paused. "Fine," I said. "Why?" "Just worried. With everything going on. Can you even afford a lawyer, or is Walter still doing it for free?" She said for free the way you'd say secondhand. I told her Walter was representing me pro bono. That I was lucky to work for someone who cared. Silence then. I just want the kids to be safe. Kids plural. Noah was my only child. She'd said it the same way Mark's attorney would say it later, like there were several versions of me failing at once. Karen and I had never been the kind of sisters you see in movies. We shared holidays, not secrets. She'd had her own hard years, a gambling problem she thought was invisible. A marriage held together, mostly by her husband's patience. I'd never judged her for it. I'd quietly sent her money twice, and never brought it up again. That call left something in the air I couldn't name. I'd had a sister my whole life. I'd never once had her ask about my rent. 2 weeks later, Walter and I drove out for a pre-hearing deposition at Hale's office. I asked to use the restroom and passed a cracked door on the way. I heard Mark's voice, calm, rehearsed, the same tone he used practicing his golf swing in the backyard. So we open with the financial angle. Then Gordon takes it from there. Hale, we open with she's barely scraping by. She can't even give the kids decent food and clothes. Why should she keep them? Judge Bennett responds to that kind of language. She's old. She hears stable home. She hears the father can provide. Mark, it's already working. I stood in that hallway long enough to memorize every scuff on the baseboard. Then I walked back in, sat down, and drank water out of a paper cup while Hale asked me about my grocery budget. I didn't tell Walter what I'd overheard. Not yet. I told myself I needed time to think. The truth was simpler. I was scared. They had a sentence built to make a judge believe poverty was the same thing as neglect, and I couldn't outshout that. I could only outtrue it. The emergency motion landed on a Tuesday morning. Walter called before I'd finished my coffee. They're claiming your building's unsafe. A broken stairwell light. They've got photographs. My landlord had fixed that light 2 weeks earlier. Someone photographed it before he did, Walter said. This is coordinated, Rachel. The deposition, the financial framing, now a safety claim. They're building a paper trail that says you can't provide a safe home. An independent investigator hired by Mark's firm had walked my stairwell and photographed a bulb I'd already reported fixed. They'd turned my apartment into an exhibit. That Saturday, at Walter's office, sleeves rolled up, he laid it out. They're playing the hardship card every motion, every deposition question, every photo, all pointing the same direction. You can't afford to raise him. We need to turn the camera around. What does Mark actually make? I told him what I knew, the rentals, the retail strip, the fake loan to Frank Doyle, and the name Noah had repeated, Whitfield Group 2, the entity I couldn't find registered anywhere. Walter wrote it down. I know a forensic accountant, Linda Ferraro. 15 years doing high-asset divorces in Fairfield County. If there's a hidden entity, she'll find the trail. How long? 8 to 10 weeks. Subpoenas, bank traces, filings, the hearings in 5. He looked at me over his glasses. Wealthy men rarely get caught because they're careless, Rachel. They get caught because someone refuses to stop looking. That night I lay awake and remembered something from our old house. A small floor safe Mark kept in the study closet, behind the tax binders. He'd shown it to me early in the marriage, back when we still showed each other things. Tax paperwork, he'd said. Boring stuff. Inside was a manila envelope, sealed with packing tape, maybe 40 pages thick. I touched it once looking for our passports and put it back. He never mentioned it again. When Mark moved into his new house on Ridgeline Court, he'd hired 2 moving trucks. Noah had told me, in passing, Dad's new house has a hidden room behind the bookshelf. That's where the safe is. I'd nodded and changed the subject, because you don't interrogate a 7-year-old about his father's floor safe. But the shape of it stayed with me. A sealed envelope. A phantom LLC, an attorney who opened his whole case with she's broke like it was a thesis statement. Na came home from his weekend at Mark's, and mentioned it again, casually the way kids mention earthquakes. Dad's safe is behind the bookshelf. It moves. I kept stirring the sauce. Oh, he showed me once. Said it's where important stuff lives. I dropped my trading card back there and had to crawl behind it. The safe was open a little. I set the spoon down. What kind of important stuff? Papers. A blue folder. Something black and shiny. I wanted to ask if he'd seen a name. I didn't. I'd sat through enough depositions at Hargrove and Kessler to know what happens to a case, and to a kid. The moment a parent turns a child into a witness for their own benefit. That's a tricky spot for a trading card, I said instead. He laughed, said he got it back. We finished dinner. Neither of us mentioned the safe again. But I heard every word. Karen's deposition happened on a video call I watched from Walter's office. Under oath, she called me scattered, exhausted, possibly depressed. She forgets things. She said, she forgot Noah's allergy medication last summer at the cabin. I had to drive 40 minutes to a pharmacy. What she left out, she'd packed that bag. She'd volunteered for it. And when the medication wasn't in it, she'd driven off and come back. The hero while I apologized for a mistake that had never been mine. Now she was retelling it under oath. Without an owner forgot, passive, like weather had done it. Hale asked if she believed I could provide a stable home. She paused, the way she does before something rehearsed. I love my sister, but I think the kids deserve consistency. Kids, again, like Noah was a category instead of a person. Afterward, Walter asked if I was okay. She's lying, I said. She's not lying, he said. She's selecting. That's worse. The next Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a group thread I'd never been added to. Header: Reed Whitfield family, red heart emoji. First message visible was from Tom, Karen's husband. Quick reminder for tomorrow's deposition questions. My name had never been in this thread. Tom had added me by accident. Fingers, guilt, a contact list, I'll never know which. I scrolled up. 4 months of messages. Diane Gordon says, open with broke. Bennett responds to that kind of language. Karen, for weeks back, told her I'm worried. She bought it, followed by a laughing emoji. Mark, 2 weeks back, once the LLC dissolves in March, none of this matters. She gets supervised at best. Diane again, a week ago. Stay calm in court. The paralegal doesn't have the spine for a fight. 180 some messages. My sister, my ex, his stepmother, her husband. All coordinating like a production schedule for the worst play I'd ever been cast in. I didn't reply. I didn't leave the thread. I opened a new folder, screenshotted every message with timestamps and names intact. Emailed the whole set to Walter's secure client folder, then to my own backup address. Then I quietly removed myself the way you close a door on someone sleeping, without wanting them to know you were ever there. Tom never texted again. I didn't tell Walter that day. A different person might have called immediately and filed something by lunch. But I'd watched enough estate contests fall apart because someone played there. Evidence too early, a will challenge lost because the family tipped their hand at mediation and gave the other side 3 weeks to build a counterstory. I knew exactly what Hale would do with a surfaced group chat. Motion to suppress unauthorized access, poisoned fruit, weeks of arguing admissibility, while Mark's team quietly adjusted. So I sat on it. I let them keep believing I didn't have a spine. There was something else in those messages worth holding on to. Mark's line, once the LLC dissolves in March, none of this matters. March was 5 weeks out. If Whitfield Group 2 dissolved and its retained earnings converted to personal income, Mark could be sitting on well over $2 million that no financial disclosure had ever mentioned. That would explain why Hale sounded so certain. It would also explain what might be sitting in that safe. Na was quiet at dinner the following Sunday, not sad quiet, thinking quiet, the kind where a kid pushes food around and studies the wall behind your shoulder. I let the silence run its course. Eventually, standing on the step stool at the counter, he said, Grandma Diane made me practice answers. I set the sponge down. Practice answers for what, honey? For if a lady asks where I sleep better, where the food's better. She said I should say I sleep better at Dad's, and here it's loud sometimes. I sat on the floor so we were eye level. Is it loud here? He looked at me like I'd asked if the sky was up. No. Okay. So here isn't loud. Here isn't loud, he repeated, louder, like the floor needed to hear it too. I wanted to call Mark. I wanted to call Diane. I wanted to call Walter and file something with the word coaching in the subject line. Instead, I looked at my son, who had just told me something honest, and understood the last thing that honesty needed was to become a legal exhibit before bedtime. Thank you for telling me, I said. You're a good reporter. He smiled, small and steady, and went to brush his teeth. The next morning at breakfast, I said, Noah, when the lady comes, the one Grandma Diane mentioned, you answer however feels true to you. You don't have to pick a side. Not Dad's, not mine, not hers. What if she asks who I like better? Then you tell her what's true. And if you don't know, I don't know is a real answer too. He nodded, asked for more cereal, and the morning went back to being a morning. but I sat there an extra minute. Diane had spent 30 years coaching witnesses for a living. Defendants, experts, people billed at $500 an hour, and now she was coaching a 7-year-old to say it's loud sometimes. I thought about that yellow legal pad. I thought about the paralegal doesn't have the spine for a fight. I thought about how wrong she was, poured another coffee, and went to work. Linda Ferraro had gray hair pinned back with a pencil and a handshake that meant business. We met at Walter's office on a Thursday. She'd reviewed what I could give her public filings, the Doyle loan, the fact that Whitfield Group 2 didn't exist in any state database. The pattern's consistent, she said, and the careful way accountants talk before they have subpoena power. He's likely retaining earnings inside the entity and paying himself a token salary, 48. On paper, he looks middling. In practice, the entity's holding the rest. How much? Conservatively, off the rental portfolio alone, $2.4 million over 3 years. Can you confirm before the hearing? She shook her head. I need bank records, operating agreements, tax returns for the entity. That's subpoena work, 8 to 10 weeks minimum. The hearing's in 9 days. I'm sorry. I can start the process. I can't finish it. 9 days. I had screenshots I couldn't safely use yet. I had a forensic accountant who needed 2 more months than I had. And somewhere in a house on Ridgeline Court, behind a bookshelf that moved, a floor safe held pages I'd never read and couldn't ask my son to fetch for me. 7 days out, Hella filed a guardian ad litem report. The appointed evaluator, Eleanor Voss, a retired family therapist, and Eleanor recognized instantly, a former colleague of Diane's from a mediation panel back in the 90s. Voss had toured my apartment on a Saturday. 48 hours notice by email from Hale's office, not from her directly. Timed so I had just enough warning to comply and not nearly enough to prepare. Her 4-page report noted the narrow stairwell, the parking lot view from Noah's window, the square footage 910 feet, described as limited for a growing child's needs. It noted the fridge held basic staples and that the living room doubled as a workspace. Every sentence in it was technically true. My apartment was small. My fridge did have basic staples. My living room did double as a workspace. But written the way Voss wrote it, square footage became neglect, and groceries became inadequacy. This isn't limited, I said out loud in my kitchen that night, looking at Noah's drawings on the fridge, the gold star chart, the chipped mug. This is a life. It's just not the kind that photographs well in a 4-page report. 5 nights before the hearing, at bedtime, Noah asked, from under his blanket, Mom, do you keep important things in a safe? My pulse didn't spike. It slowed, the way a river slows before a bend that already knows what's coming. We don't have a safe, honey. Why? Dad's has papers with his name on them. I saw one, last time I was there, crawling for my card. It said Whitfield Group 2, and plan, and a word I didn't know, like dissolution, and his name was on it 3 times. I breathed twice, the way I'd taught him. Did you take anything? No, but I remember where it was. He said it the way he said everything, clear, unhurried, a kid reporting the weather. Thank you for telling me. Is it important? I don't know yet, I said, which was a lie. Can I bring it? Next time I'm at Dad's. That's your decision, honey, not mine. I stood in the hallway afterward for close to a minute, hand flat on the wall, not breathing, not crying, just still. I lay awake that night turning it over. If I told him what to bring, he'd bring it, walk into his father's house, open a safe he wasn't supposed to touch, take something he couldn't even read, and carry it across a custody line because his mother had asked. And he would know, for the rest of his life, that his mother had used him. I'd rather lose, I said to the dark, and I meant it. I'd rather walk into that courtroom with nothing but my thermos and a spreadsheet, and lose clean on the facts as they stood, than win with something my son carried, because I hadn't been able to carry it myself. In the morning, I made eggs. Noah, if you ever want to show something to a grown-up who'll actually listen, a teacher, a counselor, a judge, anyone you can, you don't need anyone's permission. Not Dad's, not mine. He looked up, milk on his chin. Okay? Trust your own judgment. Tell the truth slowly. Okay, Mom. Then can I have more cereal? I didn't mention the safe again. I handed him a principal and let him decide what to do with it, the same way Nora had handed it to me, 30 years earlier, in a kitchen that smelled like dish soap and certainty. The morning of the hearing, Noah dressed himself before I was even out of the shower. Yellow rain jacket zipped to the chin. Forecast be damned, backpack with the little rocket patch on his shoulders. We drove to the Hartford family courthouse in silence. He held my hand crossing the street, backpack bouncing with every step. I didn't ask what was inside. We sat outside courtroom 3B. Maeve, Nora's oldest friend, 71, a retired librarian, arrived to sit with Noah, crossword book and granola bar in hand. Wood paneling, a flag in the corner, Judge Eileen Bennett on the bench, glasses on a chain. A water glass she never touched. Hale stood, buttoned his jacket, didn't look at me. Your Honor, my client maintains a stable home in Stamford. 4 bedrooms, a yard, proximity to the boys' school. He's financially secure, emotionally present, ready for full-time custody. A pause, angled slightly toward the gallery. His ex-wife frankly isn't in the same position. She's barely scraping by. She can't even provide decent food and clothes for the kids. Why should she keep them? Kids, plural, again, though we had one child. It's harder to defend a category than a name. The sentence landed like a gavel. Judge Bennett gave that same slow, considered nod. Diane sat in the second row, hands folded, pressing one finger to her pearl necklace once, and staring straight ahead. Karen sat 3 rows back, eyes fixed on me. Her husband stared at his shoes. I held my thermos under the table, cool aluminum against my palms. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. He'd just told a fast lie with a slow delivery, and the room had believed it. But I'd been raised by a woman who said tell the truth slowly. And I knew, the way you feel weather coming before you feel wind, that we were about to find out which one traveled farther. Walter called me to the stand. I walked through my budget, rent, utilities, groceries, Noah's after-school art program, insurance through my job, savings I'd kept going since before the marriage. Is that enough to give Noah a safe, stable home? Yes. Hale's cross. But you're not earning what Mr. Whitfield earns, are you? No. I'm earning what I earn. It's enough. Your apartment is 910 square feet. It is. He doesn't have a yard. He has a park 3 blocks away. We walk there most evenings. Do you believe a child benefits from financial stability? I believe a child benefits from honesty. Mark smirked. Diane touched her necklace a second time. The way you check a lock you've already checked. Hale's closing was short. The facts are plain, Your Honor. She's barely scraping by. She can't provide decent food and clothes for your son. The standard is the best interest of the child, and respectfully, the answer is Mark Whitfield. He sat. Mark let out a small, satisfied breath, the sound of a man whose flight just landed on time. Judge Bennett lifted her pen. She leaned forward, adjusted her glasses, opened her mouth around a word that was almost certainly going to be having considered. That's when I heard the bench creak behind me. Maeve's soft "oh," and then a small, clear voice cutting across the whole room the way only a child's voice can. Mom, can I show the judge the letter I found in Dad's safe? The courtroom stopped. Not figuratively, the court reporter's hands froze mid-keys. Hale's pen stopped against his legal pad. Judge Bennett's mouth closed around the word she hadn't said yet. Mark turned in his chair slowly, the way you turn toward a sound you recognize but can't yet place, and his face had already begun to change. Walter put a hand on my arm, not a warning, a brace. I looked at my son, standing between the gallery benches, backpack open, yellow jacket zipped to the collar, watching me. He wasn't asking me to let him. He was asking if he could. There's a difference. One is obedience, the other is courtesy. I didn't nod. I didn't speak. Judge Bennett studied him the way she'd study a case file carefully, without assumption. Young man, she said, and her voice had changed, softer. The way adults speak when a child has just entered the room as a person, instead of a prop. Is this something you brought on your own today? Yes, ma'am. My mom doesn't know what's in it. She told me to trust my own judgment. Hale stood. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, A minor presenting unsolicited material. Walter, quieter, rising to. Your Honor, a 7-year-old is offering to share something with the court. Relevance can be determined after it's received. Judge Bennett looked from Hale, to Walter, to Noah. Approach young man. His sneakers squeaked across the floor. He unzipped his backpack, rocket patch catching the fluorescent light, and pulled out a single folded page. A little creased from riding around with colored pencils and a worksheet. He held it up with both hands, the way you hand someone a drawing you're proud of. Judge Bennett unfolded it. The room held its breath. I could see the header from where I sat, bold, all caps. The kind lawyers put on documents meant to bind someone. The only sound was the HVAC cycling overhead. Hal had half risen and frozen there. Mark stared at the paper in the judge's hands like a man staring at a door he was certain he'd bolted. Judge Bennett read it to the end, set it down, took off her glasses, looked at Mark, not at me, not at Walter, not at Noah. Mr. Hale, she said, were you aware your client maintains an entity called Whitfield Group 2, currently holding approximately $2.4 million in unreported earnings, with a planned dissolution scheduled for March? Hale's mouth opened and shut. Your Honor, I'd need to review. It's a memo, she said, authored by a Gregory Ellis, Esquire, addressed to your client, outlining a proposed post-decree dissolution structure intended to shield marital income from equitable distribution, dated November 14th, signed. She turned to Mark. Mr. Whitfield. Does this reflect your current financial position? His tie was still knotted, his suit still pressed, his hands flat on the table, but where Walter's stillness came from discipline, Mark's came from paralysis. 2 shades of color had left his face. Diane had stopped blinking, her fingers frozen on her pearls. Karen was staring at her shoes. Her husband was staring at her. Your Honor, Mark said, that memo, it was a draft, a hypothetical. My attorney was exploring options. It's signed, Mr. Whitfield. Silence. The court reporter's keys hadn't moved once since he'd started talking. And my son, in his yellow jacket, backpack open, hands loose at his sides, watched his father's face the way kids watch weather, without judgment, just observing. I stood. I didn't smile. I looked at the judge, not at Mark, and spoke the way Nora taught me to. Your Honor, I want the record to reflect that I did not know what my son brought today. I never asked him to bring it. I never coached him about that safe or its contents. What I've told him, since he was old enough to understand, is to trust his own judgment about what to share, and with whom. If the court needs to examine that, I welcome it. Judge Bennett looked at me for the first time all morning with something beyond procedural attention. She'd been fair the whole hearing, careful, professional, but now there was recognition behind her eyes. One woman looking at another and understanding exactly what it costs to stand still while someone calls you broke in open court. Ms. Coleman, the court hears you. She turned to Hale. I'm marking this document for identification, holding it with the clerk pending authentication, and setting an emergency evidentiary hearing within 14 days, for admissibility and forensic testimony. I'm ordering a full audit of Whitfield Property Group, Whitfield Group 2, and all related entities, records produced by end of business Friday. Given the serious questions this raises about the accuracy of Mr. Whitfield's sworn disclosures, temporary sole physical custody of the minor child is awarded to Ms. Coleman, effective immediately. Pending the evidentiary hearing, Mr. Whitfield's visitation will be supervised, arranged through the court. If authentication bears this out, the matter will be referred to the state's attorney. Mark didn't move. Diane closed her eyes, not dramatically. The way you close your eyes when the lights finally come on and you've been sitting in the dark too long. Karen stood and walked out without looking at me. The door clicked shut behind her. Her husband stayed, staring at the floor. During the recess, I held Noah's hand through the hallway, thermos still warm in the other. He didn't ask if he'd done something good or something bad. He just walked with me. Mark caught up near the elevator, tie loosened, face drawn, looking a decade older than the man who'd exhaled with satisfaction 20 minutes earlier. He's a child, Mark said, voice thin now, stripped of Hale's rehearsed confidence. He didn't know what he was doing. I looked at the father of my son, the man whose own mother had left when he was 12, whose father had spent the next 20-some years teaching him that love was a balance sheet. He brought a piece of paper, Mark. The truth was already inside it. His jaw worked. I never wanted you broke. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't want to know that's what you wanted. I turned toward the elevator. Noah waved at his father, small fingers only, palm still. Mark's hand rose halfway and stopped there, suspended, watching his son walk away in a yellow jacket. I don't know what he saw in that moment. I hope it wasn't his mother. I think it was. 6 weeks later, Linda's forensic report landed on Walter's desk, $2.7 million. Her original estimate had been conservative. The extra $300,000 sat in a Delaware shell entity Mark had set up the previous summer, routed through a trust his late father had established. She traced every dollar, bank records, operating agreements, distributions Mark had mislabeled as loans. At the evidentiary hearing, the Ellis memo was authenticated. His own office confirmed the signature under subpoena. The court ordered amended disclosures and a retroactive child support recalculation. Mark owed $179,000 in back payments, based on his actual income. Sole legal and physical custody became permanent. Mark's visitation dropped to 4 supervised hours a week, pending a psychological evaluation. Judge Bennett referred the authenticated memo to the state's attorney for perjury review, and Gregory Ellis came under state bar investigation. Hale and Whitcomb quietly withdrew as Mark's counsel. His name disappeared from their website within the week. Diane stopped calling, stopped posting, stopped sending LL beanbags. Her name came off the Guardian ad litem referral list once the Voss conflict of interest surfaced in the report's footnotes. Karen sent one text. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I didn't open it. Not out of cruelty, out of trio. Some apologies exist for the person apologizing, and I was too busy unpacking boxes to perform gratitude for someone else's guilt. Her husband filed for divorce 3 months later. That part isn't my story to tell. At home, the custody chart on the fridge filled up with gold stars, and underneath, in green marker, Noah wrote Mom Night every single evening. I closed on a small 2-bedroom condo in Glastonbury that fall. Nora's inheritance covered the down payment. Noah painted his room the exact yellow of his rain jacket. The same yellow as the morning light in the kitchen where I first taught him to tell the truth slowly. Broke doesn't mean unfit. Rich doesn't mean right. And my 7-year-old carried a folded piece of paper into a courtroom. Because for years I'd told him he never needed anyone's permission to be honest. Not even mine. That's the story. A rehearsed sentence, a folded letter, and a boy who trusted his own judgment. If you've ever been told you weren't enough by someone who only counted what they could see, let this be your reminder today. You don't owe anyone the version of you they wrote for you. If this was for you, share it with a woman who needs to hear it. This has been her side of the story for every woman who held it together alone. I'll see you in the next one.